Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome back to episode 2 of Thinking Recklessly, the little podcast in which I try to think recklessly and present these reckless thoughts to you in a way that is eloquent and comprehensible enough for them to be valuable to you. And what an honor it is to be back for episode 2. Wow. So I've got to be honest, I didn't expect a world of success for my first episode of Thinking Recklessly. After all, I have no physical qualifications. I don't have an official education in what I'm talking about. I'm simply rambling on about subjects that I have a fair amount of sort of researched knowledge in. And so after I posted the first episode, I must admit I sort of ran away from it. I've got to be honest. I posted it on YouTube and didn't look at it. And usually when I post an ordinary YouTube video, I sort of keep my finger on the pulse, look at comments, look at likes. I just generally look at what people are thinking about what I've posted. I also advertise. So I'll post something on Instagram, post something on my story, say link in bio, I've posted something, go and watch. For this, I did no such thing. I sort of wanted to keep it quiet because I thought that it wasn't going to be very popular, because it is, after all, a half an hour production. And that's a lot of time out of people's days to listen to me. And imagine my surprise when this afternoon I open YouTube and see that I got over 100 listens in 5 days. And that was incredibly encouraging and incredibly heartwarming, because my podcast is, to me, content that is far more sort of authentic and more exclusive to me. It's not just a YouTube video that often has to follow certain trends and editing styles in order to be funny. And that's not discounting any of the content I've made. Simply, this is more enjoyable for me to make because it touches on more unique ideas. So that being said, now that I have a trifle of success, I will be making an effort to work on a few things. For instance, I'm going to try and speak a little bit more fluently. That I right then and there I stutter. Perfect. I want to try and speak more fluently in that I want to sort of flow more easily from topic to topic. But the difficulty lies in that I don't want this to become scripted. I don't want this to become a reading or a monologue, something like that. So I'm going to keep it as unscripted as possible. However, I need to sort of coach myself through trying to get out of tangents and getting to where I want to go. But we live and we learn. Aside from that, of course, YouTube, I realize this is just sort of a first step for me, because I'm not unaware of the fact that YouTube isn't particularly convenient for listening to things. And of course, I don't have any plans to video this right now, simply because, not necessarily because I'm too lazy, but because it becomes less superficial. I don't have to worry about how I look, and I can just talk, because that's really the only important factor of this content. So I want to try and upload this onto SoundCloud. I'd really like some feedback, if I could have it, as to what services you use. I know the overwhelming majority is probably going to say Apple Podcasts. And that is something that I am interested in getting into, but the reality is I have no idea how, and I have no idea how difficult that could potentially be. Spotify as well. So next stop will probably be SoundCloud. And as soon as I get a SoundCloud, I will post about it so that you guys know. I will post on my Instagram at Nicholas Douglas Henselwood, and you will be kept more up to date. And this will be a more advertised sort of program, a more advertised concept. Whereas last time, again, I sort of flashed it in the pan and tried to forget about it. So let's move on to the topic of today's episode. And I'll start with a passage. Every nationalist is haunted by the belief that the past can be altered. He spends part of his time in a fantasy world in which things happen as they should. In which, for example, the Spanish Armada was a success, or the Russian Revolution was crushed in 1918. He will transfer the fragments of this world to the history books whenever possible. So this is a passage from George Orwell's book. I couldn't really call it a novel. Notes on Nationalism. So we're introduced to some of the concepts that form nationalism. Get this. And the reality is, this sticks out to me for the particular reason that the nationalist, and I'm going to treat this word as interchangeable with something else, and I'll get onto that in a minute. The nationalist is haunted by the belief that the past can be altered. And he spends his time in a fantasy world in which things happen as they should. And this is probably, on a more social level, exceptionally relevant now. And this is another sort of shower thought. I think I'm not alone in saying that I have a lot of epiphanies in the shower, and I try and overanalyze things to the absolute bitter end and just overanalyze things to death. So what I'm getting at here is, the long and the short of it is that I'm trying to get to cancel culture. And these parallels are very evident. The fact that everyone who retweets a cancel so-and-so tweet is haunted by the belief that the past can be altered. And, you know, it doesn't take a genius to know that the past can't be altered. And that times change incredibly quickly. And this is by no means to excuse some of the people who have faced social media backlash at all. But I think cancel culture as, say, an item of furniture within the realm of our sociological and cultural fabric could lead down a fairly dangerous road. As we tend to, as it says here, spend our time in a fantasy world in which things always happen the way they should. And the reality is, they don't. No one is perfect. And although, you know, people online will produce a very sanitary version of themselves, they know, I think, that everybody makes mistakes. However ghastly some of these mistakes have been, people do make them. And they come to light, and it becomes a major fiasco. So a few stick out to me. Obviously, what was it? 2019, we had the James Charles, Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson drama. Oh no, was it Tati Westbrook drama, which shook up the internet. What was it? Dramageddon, I think it was called. And that was pretty major. I mean, I remember watching James Charles, who, for the purpose of what I'm saying, it's not necessary to know who he is, just that he is a YouTube creator, a content creator. You could watch his channel lose millions of subscribers. And I think he was one of the first creators to lose over 1 million subscribers so quickly. Or at all, for that matter. But it was after a series of allegations that, for the most part, were uncontested. And by the time that the statement against him was published, it was already too late. He published, I think it was 2 defense videos, and neither one of them, I don't even think people paid enough attention to hear his side of the story. So if I continue to use this as an example, I would like to add that my major, as I've mentioned in the past, is in language, sociology, philosophy, and theology. It is not in YouTube drama. And I can't begin to decipher the web of lies, manipulation, money, brash displays of, despite the fact that it wouldn't fit our stereotype, considering the characters of this narrative. It was essentially a display of alphaism, alpha maleism, in that people would try and flex their wings, as it were. Although instead of wings, it was a makeup palette, or a Louis Vuitton handbag, or a Birkin bag, or wealth. Put it this way, wealth. And in refusing, or not consciously refusing, in making the choice to only listen to the first side of the story, what does that say about democratized media, as we like to call it? The idea that the internet is in the realm of the public, and the fact that the internet is a hotbed for anybody to get recognition for what they do. And it isn't some corporation, well, so is told to us. It isn't some corporation that decides who makes it and who doesn't, like a record label, a movie house. All it takes is, nowadays, a cell phone to upload a video onto YouTube. What does it say about the justice system within the realm of democratized media if, as a collective, we are able to wreck somebody's career for a period of time without, for all intents and purposes, getting all of the facts? And once again, I do not know. This was purely an example, simply because of how the results were so evident. The results of the online flack, the online hatred, the online protest, accusation, the sharing of receipts, of screenshots. It was wild, and it spread like wildfire. So Now we ask ourselves the question, is this the duty of democratized media? Because is democracy not the public as a collective show a liking for something, therefore they will put that concept on a pedestal, and if they subsequently stop liking that particular concept, thus they remove said concept from the pedestal. In this case, a fairly bloody revolution. Is that our duty as the democratic media? Is it necessary? And what strikes me as fairly ironic is that I see a lot of parallels between the people on quote unquote Stan Twitter and the people who show an immense and in some cases blind following, but that's a topic for some other time, for neoliberalism, for political ideologies along the lines of the center-left philosophies found in the Democratic Party in the States. These people generally advocate for mental health, for LGBT rights, for gender equity and equality, for equity and equality for people of different races, ethnicities, religions, etc., which is absolutely a good thing, don't get me wrong. And I'm not here to contest that aspect of this particular group. What I am here today to highlight is the hypocrisy. And I think to a lot of people, this is not a new concept or a new statement to make, because it is absolutely hypocritical for someone to, certainly in this case at least, for someone to advocate for mental health, to advocate for these things, but then also be perfectly happy to not only make the collective decision to ruin somebody's career, but also to watch and take sort of sick glee in it. Like, I remember there were live streams and they would tally, second by second, the amount of subscribers that he was losing and she was gaining. And one has to ask oneself, was there any empathy? Was there any consideration for the person behind the screen, behind the camera, behind the ring light, if you will? And I think for a lot of people, no, it wasn't. I think for a lot of people, it was Twitter became the arena for a rather desperate game of online gladiators, in which a group of people who are traditionally undermined in conservative traditionalist society by and large banded together rather militantly to put somebody down. And that begs the question, is the democratized media neo-fascist? By which I mean, is the supposed free media, the ultimate freedom of the press, the ultimate freedom of expression, neo-fascist? By which it is governed by a central book of laws or list of rules that are enforced, quote unquote, with great authority. An authority here not meaning a power discrepancy, somebody putting somebody else in line, but as a reference to authoritarianism, in that if you do something wrong, you will be punished. It is an if and then train of events, not an if question justice chain of events. So once again, I cannot condone or condemn the actions of either party here, because the reality is I simply don't know enough. And maybe I will, maybe I can't be asked. Spoiler alert, it's likely the latter. The question we now have to ask ourselves going forward is, do we afford people the time to grow? And where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line at, I don't want to associate with this person anymore online. I don't want to consume this person's content anymore online, as is my right, because of this reason. What reason then constitutes this? And of course, it is democratic. Everyone has the right to stop following somebody. But what then? I suppose what I'm really trying to get at is the issue with, say, Armie Hammer. And he's not an internet celebrity. He's a mainstream celebrity, and I have no doubt that people listening know who he is. He has recently come under fire for a series of leaked private message conversations in which he seemed to make fairly clear his cannibalistic fantasies. Now, a lot of people were disturbed by this. Ex-partners of his spoke up. They did not debunk it. In fact, they claimed it was true. And I'm not going to go into the morality of what he said and what he alluded to doing. I'm not going to go into the morality of that, because that is another discussion. Because I don't think it is cut and shut, frankly. So something like that, to me, seems a lot more severe than the Sugar Bear hair scandal in which James Charles refused to promote Tatiana's brand because he didn't want to associate with supplements or something, and then he went and associated with Sugar Bear hair, which was a competitor. That, to me, seems like a shrewd, slightly dickish, let's be honest, slightly dickish corporate move. It does not seem like one that warrants the near death of a man's career. Because, in actuality, I wouldn't doubt that decisions like that are made all the time in business, and especially in media, broadcasting, and communications. So, this man has his career obliterated for a period of time. I'm told it's getting better. I don't follow any of them anymore because I found the whole thing so jolly immature and irritating and so incredibly bourgeois. And I could go on about that for ages. The fact that we now have a culture online in which people are worshipped for being flexers, for being hype beasts, for wearing items of clothing that are probably worth more than the laptop I'm editing this on and the device on which I'm recording this. And people are given high praise for this. So moving on from that, because I'll fall headfirst down that rabbit hole. It seems to me not immoral, but unjust that James Charles's career was obliterated and Armie Hammer's arguably is dented. Because I don't, other than him denying it, I don't think he has properly addressed it yet. And if my TikTok For You page is anything to go by, I'm not seeing as many jokes, as many memes about it. So is it dying down already? So in which case that sort of begs the question, where? How do you justify that? Someone whose messages could be used in a court of law had he ever acted on what he did, to a bitchy squiffle of high school quad proportions that turned into a career-threatening and, frankly, life-threatening experience. Because I can't begin to fathom the amount of mental turmoil that at least one of those parties must have gone through. So, is the democratic media truly democratic? Because, cancel culture aside, we also live in a political climate in which a lot of activism takes place online. And frustratingly, well-meaning activists are still called out for mistakes that they make. And small mistakes at that. Is this a simple frustration of mine? Yes. Is it based in any true and rational means? That's for you to decide. But the diplomacy that exists online nowadays, and I don't want to use the term political correctness. I don't want to be seen complaining about political correctness, because political correctness in a lot of cases simply means basic decency. And I can't for 1 second discount that. But we can't fall into the trap of micromanaging people's identities, opinions, views, and the ways in which they express them. Love it or hate it, we are never, and I speak as a liberal, more as a leftist, but as a social liberal, we are never going to have absolutely everybody on our side. And we are going to alienate people more if we are seen online to be this juggernaut of sort of bitches on Twitter. So there isn't necessarily, as in the last episode, there isn't necessarily a resolution to what I'm saying at all, because it is, after all, just thought candy. It is thinking recklessly, because this is, by and large, a cultural element nowadays. The idea that political views, very, very serious and very important political views, can be simplified down to a slogan on a trendily edited Instagram post that can be shared half-heartedly by masses. Is it that we are becoming strangers to nuance of opinion? Is it that our tolerances for nuance of opinion are decreasing, are changing? And don't get me wrong, by nuances of opinion, I'm not talking about racists, homophobes, transphobes, anti-Semites, anti-Islamists, etc. I'm talking about, believe it or not, the conflict between liberals and other liberals that we see. And liberals, and I hesitate to include myself, but I also don't want to appear to be talking down to a group of people that I largely agree with. So I will include myself. We fall into the trap of using the term taking accountability, or forcing people to take accountability for their actions, which, conceptually speaking, is a majorly good thing, because it does give somebody the opportunity and the option to make right, to make peace, and to move on from what they have done. But from what I have seen within the neoliberal community, we are getting people who agree with us to somehow take accountability for certain issues in wording, or issues in phrasing, or certain amounts of misinformation. The reality is that nobody, liberals, Republicans, communists, capitalists, authoritarians, libertarians, knows everything. And this may very well have been a rather wordy rant about cancel culture, but it becomes counterproductive to police so many people all at once. And it alienates people. Hell, it actually alienated me. It's one of the main reasons I hesitate to label myself as liberal, because I simply, it becomes so difficult to keep up with who we support, who we don't support, whether it means people or companies or political parties, or the idea that you can really respect the work of an actor, and they, something can come out from years ago that they said something, and then it's taboo to talk about them and to continue to respect them. And yes, in a lot of instances, that is absolutely correct. Because frankly, I get a foul taste in my mouth when I associate with content creators, with actors, with musicians who have, for instance, as Caucasians, said the N-word, as heterosexuals said the F-word. So yes, we do have the right to stop associating with people like that. But we really have to think. And we really have to take a look at the potential hypocrisies and dissonances between the socio-economic political ideologies and philosophies which we practice and indeed post about, but we need to look at the dissonances between that and how we treat people online. And this sounds like a cyberbullying rant. It's not. And I really hope I've gotten this point across to you. And I'll return to this passage because I think it's important. And I'll paraphrase it, and I'll change it into, let's say, a manifesto. We should not be haunted by the belief that the past can be altered. We may not spend our time in a fantasy world in which things always happen as they should, in which, for example, Tatiana Westbrook and James Charles would still be best friends. and Armie Hammer would not be a suspected cannibal. So with that, I'm going to wish you a very good rest of your week. I wish you nothing but prosperity, nothing but good thoughts, good moods, and good mental health, and hopefully a good stiff drink if if that's up your alley. And if your alley is something else that doesn't harm you or others, I hope you can indulge in it as well. And for that, I say cheers to you. I will see you in the next episode. Be sure to keep up with my YouTube channel to know when I upload next, and follow me on Instagram at Nicholas Douglas Henshelwood to know when, where, and how I'm uploading next, so that you can reach us in this realm of digital obscurity, in our metaphorical warm nook in the library that is the internet. So, good night, auf Wiedersehen, ciao, and do svidania.